series of webinars on NDC Spotlight. As you might know, this is an initiative of the UNFCCC Secretariat. Our idea is to provide a space for countries to describe their NDC and allow an audience to ask questions about the NDC. Now, the idea is more to have a set of a library of presentations, and this is why we have a very short webinar, which is about 10 minutes. Last week, we heard from Brazil, and the next one is going to be the World Bank, which will take place, is it next week? No, in 2 weeks' time. And today, we have the benefit and the honor of having Tom Leerland from the Commission, from the European Commission. He works in DG Climate Action, and he heads the work on strategy and economic assessment. So it is a pleasure to have you here. As I said, the idea is that you have a short presentation on the NDC of the European Community and its member states, and then we will open the place, the floor for questions. You have ideally through the chat directed at us, and we will filter, or at least because sometimes we have a lot of questions, so we filter them and give them to the participants. So without any further introduction, Tom, thanks a lot, and I think that Cristina is going to make you presenter, so you can share your screen and manage your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I got now the button to push share screen. So, is the presentation on?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So yes, first a quick thanks for the UNFCCC Secretariat to organize this and to give the possibility to present how parties are implementing their NDC. My job is I work for DG Climate Action at the European Commission. I'm working in a unit that looks at economic assessment and economic analysis, and as such, I'm closely involved with the policy preparations inside the Commission. I have a presentation which is too long for 10 minutes, so I will skip some of the slides. But I understand this will be made available on the website of the UNFCCC, so it should be no problem to catch up some of the slides if I now go through it fast. The presentation will give a brief introduction on, let's say, where we are in the EU on climate policy. It will then look at how we have structured the policy initiatives to achieve our NDC. It will look at the accompanying policies going beyond the pure targets for emission reductions. It will look at the enabling environment in general that we are building up, and it will give a brief outlook on the future. Quickly on where we are in the EU, I think the good story is that in the EU we have managed to see economic activity develop and grow over time, while we have been reducing emissions. Since 1990, emissions are down by 22%. While the economy has grown by 50%. We have, since 2007 actually, we have been putting together our climate energy framework to look at it in a coherent manner. The first set of targets we have defined was for the year 2020, where we have said that we would reduce emissions by 20% compared to 1990. But at the same time, ensure that we have 20% renewable energy and 20% energy efficiency. We have redone that for the year 2030, where we now say that we should reduce emissions by at least 40% and then upscaled also the renewable energy and energy efficiency targets to 27% and potentially even 30% for energy efficiency. That's under review now. We also have an interconnection target between member states, strongly focused on electricity. In part, that's also due to the success of the renewable deployment, where interconnections between member states have become quite important to make our energy system work fine. Where do we want to get to? We have developed at the European Commission a 2050 roadmap, where we would like to see our emissions evolve. We've said that we should go for 80% reductions domestically by 2050. That is feasible. That it can be done by existing technologies. And at the time, we defined a number of milestones. And in this case, I think the minus 40% clearly relates to what we have put in the NDC of achieving at least 40% reductions. Now going into the legislation. We have been quite active at the EU in the European Commission to now bring forward the legislation that should allow us to achieve our NDC. If you look at the architecture of the legislative proposals, when it comes down to climate targets, it's split up in two elements. On the one hand, we have our emission trading system, referred to as the ETS, where we want to see emissions reduced by 43%, and that's then compared to 2005, and where we would like to see the emissions in the sectors outside of the emission trading system, referred to as the non-ETS, by 30% compared to 2005. Now, the minus 43% for the ETS and the minus 30% for the non-ETS compared to 2005, if you aggregate that and compare that to the year 1990, that gets you to minus 40%. If you look at a further element of the architecture, the effort sharing sectors in the non-ETS, there we tackle typically the small-scale sources: roads, buildings, waste, agriculture. This is an element of our policy domain still strongly focused on national competences. So we have split that up in national targets. There is also a link with land use, though for a limited extent. Up to, we have proposed 280 million tons of potential credits from the land use could be used in the ESR, and the land use sector as a whole needs to achieve a no debit target. Quickly on the ETS, that's a continuously decreasing cap, where we have said that after 2020, the annual reduction, the linear reduction factor needs to go up to 2.2% to achieve the minus 43% reduction. We have a majority of allocations in the ETS that goes via auctioning, but there's also still for industry exposed to international competitiveness, there's still an amount of free allocation. Then looking at the effort sharing regulation, as I indicated, this is where we distribute the efforts across member states for, sectors typically associated with small sources of emissions. We have differentiated these efforts, taking into account differences in income level. So the highest income member states have the highest reduction targets, in this case going up to minus 40. On the other side, the lowest income member states have lower reductions compared to 2005, with the lowest income state actually having a target equal to 0%. But there is some flexibility in there. There is an amount of land use asset that is limited, and an amount actually of links between the ETS and the non-ETS also limited, and that's also indicated in this graph. Quickly on land use, I think what we want to make sure is that that land use sector as a whole, that the sink does not generate debits, and that is, I think, the primary rule that all member states should try to achieve. The part of land which is, let's say, easier to measure is already included in our non-ETS sectors, and we then talk about the agricultural emissions of methane and N2O. That is, let's say, the red part of this graph, while the part that is associated with forestry, biomass, and soil, where there are more uncertainties, we see that part as part of the land use sector as a whole, where we want to achieve at least that there are no debits in that system. That was a short introduction on how we see the policy architecture for the targets and the emission reduction targets in the EU. But then, of course, we have accompanying policies to achieve those targets. Many of those are focused on the energy sector. We actually in the EU see that as an integrated policy, climate and energy, which we refer to as the Energy Union. There were last winter a package of measures strongly focused on the energy sector, all contributing on achieving those goals of the energy union. And I've highlighted here four important policy proposals. One was related to the electricity market design, how that functions in the EU, between the member states, within the member states. One was focused on energy efficiency, one was focused on renewables, and one was focused on energy union governance. To go into some of the details, if you look at renewables, where are we today? Now, I think we've seen a strong progress in renewables penetration in the EU. One of the major achievements of that is that certainly costs came down a lot. Strong effects in terms of emission reductions, but we have challenges now. How can we remain in the lead? How can we remain? How can we continue to see deployment of renewables in the market? How can that be integrated in the electricity market? And there, I would say the proposal for the market design is important. How to deal with increased share of renewables in your electricity sector. On energy efficiency, I think good to point out is that we have a comprehensive set of policies trying to tackle energy efficiency improvements. We have the Energy Efficiency Directive, we have a Buildings Directive, we have eco-design, which works on standards for notably appliances. We've seen significant progress there. Another element is our policies on CO2 efficiency of cars and the standards of, again, appliances. The challenge ahead is we clearly still have a large potential in the EU. How do we mobilize the finance? Because it is a potential that requires quite a lot of upfront finance requirements. And how do we achieve long-term electrification, which is notably good in the building sector and in the transport sector also to achieve energy efficiency. I will skip this, but this is a slide that gives you some more insight on the elements of what we have proposed last winter in the winter package, focusing on this, but it relates to the Energy Efficiency Directive, the Buildings Directive, and our eco-design plans. Now, I think quite interesting is our governance proposal. Our governance proposal looks at how one, from a planning perspective and from a follow-up perspective, can better integrate both climate and energy policies. We have quite some obligations, commitments already in the EU on what one should plan, report, and monitor on both climate and energy policies, but it was a bit disaggregated. You had many different reporting streams. What we try to do under the governance proposal is to bring them all together, where member states will have to make a plan that looks both at all the energy policies and objectives and the climate policy and objective. It will have to make that plan for a 10-year period from 2021 to 2030. There will be follow-up over the coming years. Every 2 years, member states have to report. For climate, they will have to do that every year because we have reporting obligations regarding the UNFCCC. And we will monitor that from the European Commission at a central level to see how we are progressing in Europe on our ambition collectively. Coming back to transport, we have seen quite some achievements in making cars more efficient. Our present aim is to have the new car fleet achieving 95 grams per kilometer driven, but we are now looking into upcoming new initiatives. We recently made a proposal on monitoring and reporting for heavy-duty vehicles. We did not have that yet in place in Europe, and still this year we are intent to come forward with the CO2 standards for cars and vans for the period after 2020, and then next year we will do a similar process for heavy-duty vehicles. Fluorinated gases. The F-gases, we came out with a new regulation on F-gases in 2014, which we expect to reduce F-gas emissions in Europe by 2/3 by 2030. And of course, well, that is largely contributing to what we have to do under the Kigali amendment, but that for the Montreal Protocol on the phase down of HFCs, but of course that will go forward even longer in the future. I started with looking at our pure climate targets. Then I looked at accompanying policies, notably in the energy domain, to achieve our NDC targets. But we see it as an even bigger integrated environment. All the policies listed on this slide are typical policies we can contribute to the achievement of our energy and climate action goals. For instance, there is quite some policies in the EU on boosting investments and kickstarting our economy. There is a lot of employment policies strongly focused on skills and how to adapt the workforce for all kinds of challenges, but they include the transition to a low carbon economy. The digital agenda, a nice example is there how to empower citizens, and we see that strongly in the electricity market. The circular economy, how to become resource efficient in all domains. That's quite important. Think about waste streams which we could convert, recycle, and bring back into our economy. That will have many benefits, and certainly also for greenhouse gas reductions, and even initiatives in the financial world related to the capital market union. I largely have crossed my 10 minutes, so I will skip. Maybe to finalize, of course, that was for mitigation, but we also look at adaptation. There's an EU strategy on adaptation, promoting actions by member states, but even going to the city and regional level to develop and promote planning towards adaptation. Finally, of course, the aim is to make us become efficient, productive, and on that level, I would say that at least our NDC seems to indicate that we would be one of the most greenhouse gas efficient economies if we succeed in achieving it by 2030. Thanks. I think it's time for questions. Sorry that it was already quite long.
Thank you very much, Tom. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, we have received a number of questions, and I again remind participants to send it through a chat, either to all participants or to us. There's a couple of questions surrounding changes in politics, as you would have expected. The first one, well, I'll just give them to you all. These are the effects of Britain exiting, whether you have calculated it, and given that it has not only big emissions but also big reductions, as it was seen there in the graph. Then whether whether you have considered also the exit of the United States from the Paris Agreement. And there's a third question about what are the expectations for the future on expansion. So this is a first set of questions, and I'll let you answer these three and then give you some more.
Okay. On the Brexit, I can't really comment on what that exactly will mean. I think it will all depend on how the UK will leave the EU and what that will mean for climate. I think there are all kinds of elements there that will be looked at, and of course, whatever will be decided there, well, we will then, of course, be very transparent about what that means for climate policies. But I think today is not the moment to say what that exactly entail, and it will all depend on how Brexit, and in that respect, what the UK will do on climate in that context, will be at the end. On the exit of the United States from the Paris Agreement, I think my commissioner has been clear. I mean, we want to continue with the road we took in Paris. We want to make sure that Paris is a success. And from our perspective, we will continue with implementing the policies needed to achieve what we see as needed, and in this case, of course, to achieve our objective target as defined under the NDC. So there, I don't think there is a change due to what came out of the US regarding the Paris Agreement. Expansion, that's maybe an interesting question because, well, I don't want to say when and how the next expansion will happen, but we have had that in the past. I mean, in the run-up to 2020, Croatia joined the EU, and Croatia was not there before it joined the EU. At the moment that a member state or a potential member state joins the EU, in the treaty that regulates that, you will find exactly, well, for all the policies out there, what that means for that specific country. But for Croatia, what we did is we basically copied and pasted our own internal legislation for Croatia and they got a similar ambition level as what EU member states have under our existing legislation at the time. So I would assume that if an expansion would happen, a similar process would happen in the future. But again, I'm not here to comment on when we will see expansions in the EU. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Then we have two questions that are more broadly, like broader on EU-wide action. The first one is whether you can give some details on the ability of the EU to continue to grow and at the same time reduce emissions. This is, do you consider that you have decoupled, and what are the expectations about economic growth under a scenario in which you are looking at reducing 40% of emissions? That's one question, and the other one is relating to the use of renewable energy and renewable energy policy. Have you studied the impact on the ability of the EU to continue to provide energy to all its citizens, and what about the costs?
Okay. When we came forward with our, well, maybe first on decoupling. At least we have been successful in decoupling over the last basically 20 years, 25 years. Since 1990, you clearly see that we have managed to continuously reduce emissions while seeing well, economic growth. It is true that the economic crisis around 2009 saw a reduction of emissions, but if you look at the longer picture, that was, well, it was an event, but overall economy started growing again, and we still continue to reduce emissions. Now, I don't think we have per definition decoupled. Decoupled will mean that we, well, in the way it's framed like that, it sounds like if you already have done it all and you don't need to continue to take action. I think it's clear that if we would not have the policies we have today and further well, improve them, then of course emissions might not continue to decrease in the, well, magnitude that we want. So it will require additional policies, it will require additional efforts. In the EU, we try to prepare for that through, well, a whole cycle when we do policy preparation. In the context of 2030, we started in, if I get it correct, I think it was in 2013 or 14, with a green paper where we were consulting our stakeholders at large on what they thought what we needed to do for 2030. We then, after the stakeholder consultation, made an impact assessment. That impact assessment has quite a number of different economic modeling tools, looking from different angles what different levels of climate ambition, but also different level of energy policy ambition would mean for the EU economy. There we have had quite some focus on the levels of renewable energy, the levels of energy efficiency one could or one would need to achieve to get to certain levels of greenhouse gas reductions. And it's quite interesting. You'll find quite some material there, what might mean for your economy. For instance, one of the indications we have is that energy efficiency as a policy, because it allows you to invest directly into your own economy, might be a policy that can actually increase growth. It's a kind of investment policy that boosts investments. And all that types of analysis was made to come forward with our policy package. Actually, I don't know if the slide is still on, but if you would go to this website, as listed here, the europa.eu/klima website, and you would go there to, for instance, policies, and then you go to 2030, you will find all these documents and you will find that economic analysis. From our side, we think that's quite important to come out with that and to point out what are the challenges and what are the opportunities. These numbers are not all only about growth. They also show you costs. They also show you the investment challenge. And they also show you that at some point, certain combinations of targets might actually have reverse effects. So that kind of analysis was quite extensively done to prepare our policy debate.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know, maybe because there was this question about ensuring the supply of energy. Maybe you can elaborate a bit on that, but then I'll throw you another two questions, and they relate But let me throw you the other two questions because these are the last ones. One is about if you could elaborate on the policies on agriculture and land use, and relating to that, I think that this is more about clarification. What is the meaning of no debits? Does that mean that you're not counting them, or you're forcing member states not to deforest or not to be a net source in the land use sector?
Okay, so we have the rest question and the agriculture land use question, and that seems to finalize the questions. On the renewables, so yes, the modeling tools as used, for instance, look at exactly how renewables impact the energy system as a whole. And there I think it's quite interesting to see that, well, the sector where I guess most of the time this question pops up of ability and can we do it, and what is the impact, is notably in the electricity sector. Large amounts of renewables in the electricity sector make the sector more variable, requires you to deal with intermittency. And there I think it's so interesting to look at the proposal that is now being discussed on electricity market design. Electricity market design looks exactly at how can we deal with that. So it starts to ask questions at, okay, how can we improve market connections across borders in the EU? We have a single energy market, but still improvements can be made. How do you make trading happen? How do you improve those interconnections? That's one aspect of dealing with intermittency, because if in one member state or in one area of the EU there might be low amounts of productions, in others there might be high, and how do you connect these two? But it also goes to the final end consumer. How can you make that consumer more flexible? How can it act better in the market? It is all these kinds of questions that one needs to address. And again here, I do think we have quite some analytical background to make the point that we think it is possible, but also to make the point that we think that certain improvements needs to be made to achieve that, and actually to reduce the cost of that kind of deployment. Again, but you would not find that on the website of DG Klima, but if you would go to the website of DG Energy, DG Ener, you will find that material that goes into that. So we think we can deal with quite high levels of renewables. We're actually looking at a renewables deployment level of 50% in the electricity sector by 2030. We think it's possible, but we do recognize it will require changes to our energy market. Regarding the question on agriculture and land use and the no debit rule, so to be clear, for agriculture, when it relates to emissions, which we refer to as the non-CO2, so the methane emissions and the nitrous oxide emissions, these are covered under the effort sharing regulation. So they are covered under the normal, let's say, target that we have to reduce emissions by 40% as a whole in the EU compared to 1990. But okay, for that subsector, because it's part of the ESR, that's translated into a 30% reduction compared to 2005 by 2030. But then if you look at the CO2 from agriculture and land use, we deal with that in the land use sector, so referred to as LULUCF, land use, land use change and forestry. So it covers the soil emissions or soil absorptions from the agriculture sector and from the forestry sector. And there indeed the rule is that we would not want to see a change to or a deterioration of the situation compared to where we are today. So if you would deforest, that would have to be accounted for. But the opposite is also true. If you would plant new forest, that should be accounted for. And as a whole, that should not lead to no debits. But the accounting rules for LULUCF, they are quite, well, let's say, specific. But that is exactly what the proposal tries to do. So if you account for all these emissions, you should not increase a debit. Also, experience a debit. Sorry, that's the wording. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, thank you. I think that on the first question on agriculture, is there anything you can say about policies in general to kind of promote or regulate greenhouse gases throughout the EU?
Yeah. Okay. On that one, what we have is under our common agriculture policy, there is a number of greening requirements in general. that relate to activities that farmers need to do to have access to funding under the Common Agriculture Policy. And there is a number of budget items that also allow for incentivizing additional actions. So that is a way for us to incentivize actions on the farming sector in Europe. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so that I don't see any other questions, and actually we are already out of time. So Tom, I would like to really thank you for this. It has been very insightful. So from our side, thank you very much. We will upload this webinar on the UNFCCC website. Then our next webinar, as I said, would be on the 6th of July with the World Bank. So thank you very much, Tom.
Welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.